Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going through chapters 13 through 21 of Genesis. Again, going through Genesis or Revelation through the Chronological Study Bible. If you folks have already been taking me up on this offer who are joining in, and I think it's awesome. If you are going to join in with us and you need the Bible, it is a chronological study Bible, so it takes the books of the Bible historically. Please email me and I'll send you a Bible, so I need your address to do that. And you can email me at becauseloveneverfails@gmail.com. So before we get started today, I just want to point out a few things. And in our last studies, some selfishness jumped out at me. There were two scenes in particular, and what it was when Adam and Eve were in the garden and they had eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then they're putting tunics on themselves, or fig leaves on themselves, and they're ashamed. They're covering themselves. They're now like myself, in that mode. And then the Tower of Babel, also, where the people were taking it upon themselves. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to build this tower to heaven. And in a devotional this morning through Oswald Chambers, he said this, which jumped out at me. It says, "We have the idea that we can dedicate our gifts to God. However, you cannot dedicate what is not yours. There is actually only one thing you can dedicate to God, and that is your right to yourself. If you will give God your right to yourself, He will make a holy experiment out of you, and His experiments always succeed." The other thing is, I want to just read to you out of Acts chapter 17, verse 11, when Paul was speaking to the Bereans, and he was speaking to the Bereans, and this is what he has to say of them. "They received the word with all readiness and searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so." And that just really speaks to what we're doing. This is a survey, and we're doing 10 pages at a time. So just really seek this stuff out for yourselves, guys. Who is the God of the Bible? And I just hope and encourage you to delve into Scripture. Also, in that, what I noticed myself yesterday is I pointed out that Noah's offering after he left the ark, his offering to God may have been the first one. I'd already forgotten just a few chapters previously the offerings of Cain and Abel. And then Abel's offering was preferred, and then we see Noah's offering following suit with that. So Noah's offering wasn't the first offering. Okay, jumping in. So I want to dial us in real quick again geographically, because we're going to be changing maps today. So I just want to point this all out again, because we're going to see in chapter 14 today that some kings from Mesopotamia are coming into the land of Canaan where Abram is. And so they're coming into the land of Canaan, what really appears to be to just kind of solidify and set up this trade route. And so we're going to have some interaction there. So now we're going to transition to zoom into the land of Canaan here, or modern-day Israel. So here we are zooming in, and so when in chapter 12, when Abram was called out of Haran, he comes south into Canaan. And the first place he comes to is Shechem. And then later on, he goes about 30 miles south, further south, and sets up between Bethel and Ai. And then, of course, with the famine, he goes down into Egypt, spends some time in Egypt, and then comes back up into the land of Canaan. And when he comes back up into the land of Canaan, we're going to see him in Hebron and Gerar, which is a little further south of Bethel and Ai. And some things to note is, one, when Abram left Haran, he had possessions. And then when he goes into Egypt, with possessions and livestock, and he comes out what seems to be with even more possessions and livestock. So he's moving through the land kind of in a caravan with people and servants and family, livestock, and he's being blessed all along the way. And also his nephew Lot is with him. So when they come back out of Egypt, before that, one of the things in chapter 12 too that just kind of spoke to me was, as he's here, it says, in Canaan, and it says, and the Canaanites were in the land, right? So it's not just him. So the Canaanites were in the land, and if we recall from previous study, the Canaanites were worshiping their own god, right? Which was the god of Shemesh. So again, the God of the Bible is interacting with people. He's interacting in history, at places and time. With nations. I mean, this is a God who is interactive. So there's that, and then into chapter 13. It doesn't say this, but Abram has a wife, Sarah, and then Sarah has a maidservant, Haggai, that we're going to meet later on. And I'm wondering, because it says Haggai was an Egyptian, if during that famine of Canaan when they were down in Egypt, if that's where they met Haggai, and if she became became the maidservant of Sarah there, and then traveled back north with them. But it says Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and gold, and so he's traveling back out of Egypt to the land of Canaan, and what there is with his nephew Lot. Lot has a lot of possessions as well. So does Abram. So Abram says, "Hey, you know what? Let's not have any strife here. We're brethren. May there not be any strife between me and you." And then he gives Lot the option. He says, "Look, we've got all this land before us. Where would you go?" And he gives Lot the option, and Lot chooses the valley of Jordan. And also it says Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, not sure of exact location, but it would be south of the Dead Sea on one of the sides here. And so that's where he would have settled. This is going to be important to note also in a sec here. And this is, and then Abram dwelt, and it says, in the land of Canaan. So there was some time, passing here. He dwelt there, Lot settling in Sodom and Gomorrah. And as Abram's there, the Lord says to him, "Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever." Now mind you, at this time, Abram doesn't even have a son. And so Abram's not even thinking of descendants. But at this point, he's not even questioning. It's just, he's just following God's commands. And then in chapter 14, there's a lot going on. And basically what I really want to point out is there's these group of kings, again, out of Mesopotamia, coming into the land of Canaan, and what appears to be to really set up this trade route and keep this trade route open. Well, as they're doing that, they're having these battles. So the kings of Shinar are coming in, they're having these battles with the different folks here, and then they're coming down and they're taking possessions and whatnot, and moving through. And then, notice as they're kind of moving through this side of the Dead Sea, that's right in this area where Lot has set up camp, right? So they come through, they do take Lot and his possessions as hostage, kind of come back up into this area. Well, they end up right in Abram's neck of the woods in Hebron, where he's hanging out, where he, meaning Abram's hanging out. And one of the servants of Lot escapes, comes to Abram and says, "Hey, he's been taken captive." And so Abram is drawn into battle, pursues these kings from Mesopotamia all the way up as far north as Dan and Damascus. And he regains the possessions, the peoples, the livestock, what have you, and he comes back. He comes back down south, back into the area. Looks like would be the valley of Shaveh. And when he comes back, the king of Sodom, he gives back possessions to the king of Sodom and also to the king of Salem. So he's giving back these possessions. The king of Salem, who's Melchizedek, actually is noted here as the priest of Most High God, and he says, and he blesses Abram, this Melchizedek, and he says, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And he gave Abram a tithe of all that he had returned, right? So this tithe was given, and from Melchizedek, Abram receives that, and we're going to see Melchizedek referenced later on in the New Testament. Whereas with the king of Sodom, he doesn't accept anything from Sodom. He gives Sodom back everything. Okay, so this is post-battle, post-promise. God's starting to make these promises to Abram, saying, "Hey, this is all going to be yours." Here's Abram. He doesn't even have a son, and so I'm just kind of imagining Abram. He just got pulled into this battle. All this stuff's going on. He's being made these promises in this foreign land, and God speaks right to Abram. "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." And so he's asking, Abram's asking God, "Look, I have a servant. Is it going to come through that?" No. God promises him that it's going to be his heir, that the heir is going to come directly from Abram's own body. And it says that Abram believed him. Abram believed the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Also in chapter 15, God speaks of Abram's descendants being held captive in a strange land, with strangers in a strange land for 400 years. This speaks of Egypt, so this is a prophecy here that's speaking towards what's going to happen with the Israelites in Egypt. Also here, just some an interesting thing to point out is this covenant's made with, the Lord makes his covenant with Abram, and so these animals are cut in half, these various animals are cut in half, and this was a tradition back then, and so with them being cut in half, normally what would happen is there was a superior party and an inferior party, right? So the inferior party would cut everything in half, and then in covenant to the superior party, whatever that covenant would be, the inferior person would walk through and walk through in between these cut halves. Well, in this dream that Abram has, it's just the opposite. The God shows up as a smoking oven and a burning torch, and God walks through the halves. And to me, just really spoke to, it's like, okay, hold on, God's taking on this inferior role, right? He's condescending of sorts. He's taking on this inferior role, which is a type and speaks to what we'll see with Christ in the New Testament. Okay, so again, the Sarah, Abram's wife, cannot bear children, so she gives Haggai, this Egyptian maidservant, to Abram. Abram has Ishmael with her. Ishmael is promised to have a lot of descendants as well through Hagar. Also in chapter 17, circumcision is brought out. So there's this God tells Abram that all the males of his household, from 8 days old to even the servants and anyone in his household, is to be circumcised. And let's see here. Abram is also given the name Abraham from God. Sarah's name becomes Sarah, not S-A-R-A-I, but S-A-R-A-H. So their names are changed. And again, this promise of a covenant. And he says here, but my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. So again, prophesying that he's going to have his own son and that his name's going to be Isaac. In chapter 18, Abraham now receives this visit from these three men who are actually heading in to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of their wickedness. But in this, they're also speaking to Isaac being born of Sarah. Abraham has this dialogue with God as these three men leave his presence to go in and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And really, he's interceding on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah, saying, hey, you know what? If there were 50 righteous there, would you destroy it? If there were 45, if there were 30, he gets all the way down to 5 people, and it shows really this dialogue that and this openness that he has with his God. So the three men go into Sodom, and within Sodom they meet up with Lot, and so when they meet up with Lot, invites them in, guards them for an evening, and in addition to that, Lot and his family escapes Sodom and Gomorrah before it's destroyed. And during this escape, the wife of Lot looks back. That she was told not to look back. She disobeyed and was turned into a pillar of salt. In chapter 20, Abraham moves into this region of Gerar, and Abimelech is there, and so he has this interaction with Abimelech. That's going to show up again here in chapter 21. But then getting into chapter 21, Isaac is born, and as commanded, Abraham circumcises Isaac. And at this time, Ishmael, who was born of Hagar, would have been 14 years of age. And also here, God has to, tell Abraham, hey, listen, Sarah wants Hagar and Ishmael to leave. And Abraham doesn't want this to happen. And God tells him directly, yes, may it be so. And so Hagar and Ishmael part ways. And then also the last covenant with Abimelech. In Gerar, Abimelech is noticing, hey, God is with you, Abraham. Please make a covenant with me. And they do make a covenant. Abimelech seems to be really wanting to protect himself. And they make a covenant at Beersheba. And till next time, guys, I've got 10 seconds. God bless you. rock and roll.